Hello. So often I'm talking about connecting with the present moment. And another way of saying that is connecting with God, if you want to use a spiritual phrase to describe the inherent abundance and peace, the peace that passeth understanding, that's just there when we recognize it, when we really feel present. And it's there even when we don't recognize it, which is, I would say the basis of so much spiritual teachings. And one of my primary interests when I talk about, law of attraction, manifesting principles, is just pointing that out. My book, The Law of Attraction Simplified, talks a lot about that. And my podcast talks a lot about this. And my favorite term to describe this is actually a Joseph Murphy term that he uses in this chapter, and I think he uses it elsewhere, and other people might have used it before. But I like to say it's called the absolute method. It's just thinking of God, and, of course, Emmett Fox, his golden key is basically the same thing. Instead of your troubles, think of God instead. H. Emily Cady always talks about this. Richard Dotz is a great modern example of a teacher who really emphasizes this, you could say, approach, but it's not really even an approach. If you contemplate God, if you recognize the saving grace, the literal saving grace of this moment, everything shifts. And this can be used as a manifesting tool as well, even though I would argue that it's almost secondary to just the recognition that everything is okay. But when you recognize everything is okay, it seems like fundamentally things shift and healings can occur, spectacular things can occur. Again, Joel Goldsmith, somebody that I've been talking about a lot recently, he's basically all about the absolute method. But anyway, what's interesting is the absolute method. Murphy is talking about it here in chapter 6, Practical Techniques of Mental Healings from The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And this section actually is kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a superficial way of describing this approach, which is funny because the term, the absolute method, just because of my sensibility, I like that term more than saying the golden key or anything else. But this is a great passage. It's just there's a lot more to it than just what Murphy talks about here. But the way that Murphy talks about the absolute method here is, of course, what can happen when you connect with God, when you golden key a situation. It's just there's so much depth to it. And I don't really think Murphy covers the depth in this passage we're about to read, which is totally fine. It's just understand there's a lot more to it than just what Murphy talks about, okay, here. He talks about it in other places. I don't know if he uses the term absolute method in other places as much, but he talks about it in a more profound way in other parts of this book and in some of his other writings. And somebody like H. Emily Cady really connects this idea of just passively waiting for God and recognizing God, and then just that's it. She does that really well. I mean, she's the best at that, in my opinion. Anyway, this section is called The Absolute Method is Like Modern Sound Wave Therapy. And Murphy writes, many people throughout the world practice this form of prayer treatment with wonderful results. The person using the Absolute Method mentions the name of the patient, such as John Jones, then quietly and silently thinks of God and his qualities and attributes, such as God is all bliss, boundless love, infinite intelligence, all-powerful, boundless wisdom, absolute harmony, indescribable beauty, and perfection. As he quietly thinks along these lines, he is lifted up in consciousness into a new spiritual wavelength, at which time he feels the infinite ocean of God's love is now dissolving everything unlike itself in the mind and body of John Jones, for whom he is praying. He feels all the power and love of God are now focused on John Jones, and whatever is bothering or vexing him is now completely neutralized in the presence of the infinite ocean of life and love. So, this is golden keying a situation, as Emmett Fox would say. You take the personality out of the situation, your personality and the person that you are trying to facilitate healing for. You take all that out. Great title. Joseph Benner, was his book's called, I think, The Impersonal Life. You take the personality out and you just contemplate God and the qualities of God, whatever that means to you. Murphy just said a bunch of them, harmony, intelligence, all powerful, boundless wisdom, indescribable beauty, perfection, whatever that is, just that. And that is always here. Always here. God is impersonal. God is no respecter of persons. When you recognize that and touch that, something happens. But you don't do it, seemingly. It's impersonal. It's healing on like another level, as Murphy would say. Now, like I mentioned, I think that's a little bit superficial describing it that way, but from a practical healing standpoint, which is what Murphy's going over here, this is a practical technique in mental healings, which is what this chapter is called. This is how to practically golden key a situation like this. If you want to help somebody heal or help yourself heal using this approach. Murphy writes, the absolute method of prayer might be likened to the sound wave or sonic therapy recently shown me by a distinguished physician in Los Angeles. He had an ultrasound wave machine which oscillates at a tremendous speed and sends sound waves to any area of the body to which it is directed. These sound waves can be controlled, and he told me of achieving remarkable results in dissolving arthritic calcareous deposits, as well as the healing and removal of other disturbing conditions. To the degree that we rise in consciousness by contemplating qualities and attributes of God, do we generate spiritual electronic waves of harmony, health, and peace. Many remarkable healings follow this technique of prayer. So again, this is the golden key, in just a very practical way if you want to use it to help heal or improve your life. And not just physically heal, but heal relationships, heal financial issues, whatever. I mean, Emmett Fox says, whatever the problem may be, take your mind off of the problem and contemplate God. Tremendous power in just doing that. And there's a lot more depth to this than what Murphy talks about here in this short passage. And Murphy was aware of that depth, but he gives this metaphor of this, sonic wave therapy, just to show you how practically you can utilize this stuff. I made a podcast episode a while ago. I'll link it above. Just talking about why, if you get into this golden key, absolute method, whatever you want to call it, it's like the essence of this stuff on like a spiritual level. It's my favorite, I would probably say, method, if you want to call it a method, for, improving your life using these principles. But the depth is something that goes beyond anything personal. And that's, I guess you could say that is power. It's very, very beautiful. So I hope this was helpful and somewhat clear. Ironically, as I said, the absolute method is probably my favorite description to use to describe the power of being abundantly in the moment. Yet the passage that I quote it from is kind of a superficial explanation of it. So, if you have questions, let me know. You can contact me at radicalcounselor.com. And enjoy your day.